Hi, my name is Yahav, and I was born and raised as an Israeli and as a Zionist. During the past few years, I've gone through a process of questioning the narrative I grew up with regarding this land we live in and the people living on it. This podcast is about voices of the disillusioned. Each episode is a one-on-one heartfelt conversation with an activist who supports the Palestinian struggle, telling the story of the journey that led them to see through what they were taught. Each of these people has their own unique path that I believe anyone can learn from. Whether you're a Palestinian or a Jew living here or abroad, or just anyone who feels strongly about this subject. I hope you learn as much as I learn from them about how to build a better future for all people between the river and the sea. So today I'm hosting Yuval Gal Cohen. She is a conscientious objector who refused to serve in the Israeli military, a feminist, human rights activist, and a singer. She's 27 years old and currently living in Leipzig, Germany, where she co-initiated JID, a local group of anti-occupation Israeli activists. Hi, Yuval.
Hi.
How are you?
I'm excited.
Yeah, we've been trying to do this for a while because you live abroad and you come here to visit sometimes just to see family and stuff like that. And we tried to squeeze it in and this time it worked. So I'm really happy. We're going to talk about how you became an objector and all your activism and all the amazing stuff that you do. So let's start with your parents. Give me a little bit of an overview. What kind of home you grew up in?
I was very lucky in that sense and looking back. I grew up in a generic but special leftist Zionist household. My mom was pretty political and she didn't hide reality from us, any reality, whether it's politics or more different sexual orientations of people around us, and was very open. And my dad is not very much of a political person, but he's liberal and open and accepting and very supporting though.
You grew up in a home where your mother was not only talking to you about these things, but she was an activist in an organization. Tell me a little bit about that.
She was very much active in different fields, and she took part in this organization called Women in Black. The peak of its activity was in the 90s.
This is anti-occupation demonstrations of
so
women.
Women in Black was an organization of women calling for the military to
disengage from the West Bank.
Exactly.
And Gaza at the time, right?
I think so. This is before I was born, or a bit after when I was born. I was very little. So it's from, like, I've got pictures of her with a sign like "Stop the Occupation," like blocking a road with a bunch of other women. So yeah, she was active in that. And these days she took her feminist activism. She was very much involved in the feminist movement here and everywhere, really. And she made this into her career right now. She talks wherever is possible about how we create a culture without sexual violence and how we live in a culture and we build a culture that prevents sexual violence. So even though she's these days not very active against the occupation, she's engaging in politics and with what is happening from a feminist point of view.
She instilled in you a feminist consciousness. She made you a political person from a very young age.
Absolutely. Even before I knew the right terms of the occupation or sexism, for example, she gave me the sense of like what was good and especially what was good for all.
Mm. And that like
What is
justice is
harmful.
something that you should like strive for.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think so. Whether it was intentional or just by her work and existing. Like, she took me to my first demonstration, basically, when I was like 8. And it was the International Day Against Violence Towards Women. And that's also like one of those demonstrations that like every year we specifically talk, and she's going to the demonstration every year, and I go now also when I live in Leipzig. My activism started from there.
Mm-hmm. But your mother did serve in the army.
She did. She was a military driver, and she had the knowledge of what was happening, but I think it was, to be frank, also kind of like different times of the role that the military served.
Mm-hmm.
And the actions that it did.
So you're saying by the time you were a child and growing up,
I think it just became worse. And
she realized that, you know, she would support you if you decide not to go.
Exactly. Even though she still holds her beliefs of what she finds necessary in the military, basically.
And she's still Zionist.
She considers herself a Zionist, but she understands absolutely what is going on. And I think her Zionism, but that's probably a defense mechanism. I'm just realizing that I'm trying to like defend, you know, it's like, yes, my mom considers herself a Zionist, but she doesn't think like that and that and that, you know? It's like, oh yeah, like she holds different beliefs of what Zionism is in her mind, I guess, like most people.
Yeah, a lot of people here.
Yeah.
Definitely. So I think some people listening would be really surprised and even like puzzled by the fact that this woman that you're describing, who raised you and your sisters to be so politically aware and, you know, comes from a feminist point of view and human rights, defines herself as a Zionist.
I think because like even the Israeli left and the Israel alternative political circles are still not in the full mind and understanding of what intersectionality means. I think in a way when we have a lot of discussions about it, she's doing a lot of research and everything, but I would still consider her like kind of like on the white feminism scale. Even though, of course, she taught me everything that I know about, you know. And she's doing her research and she's very involved and she always educates herself. But in that sense, yeah, she would be like, again, from a feminist point of view, she always looks at it in a feminist point of view at a situation. I don't know. I don't want to put what I think that she thinks, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I'm getting confused there. And she's it's complicated and interesting person to talk to because we agree on a lot of very obvious things, but we still argue a lot, but in a good way. Mm-hmm. We discuss, like, we really challenge each other.
This sounds like a really interesting relationship between like your views and you know how you see things differently, but how you also see things the same. Exactly. And it's also really interesting to hear someone who really grew into a home and into a political consciousness. That's something most people, they don't have that at home. They develop it from the outside. They become activists from things that they, you know, go throughout life. And the home, not many people have like someone, or I mean, I don't know, maybe I'm, maybe white people. But like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah,
a lot of people.
I think I'm not sure if it was a conscious decision. Mm-hmm. Not sure if she was aware of it or not, but this is definitely part of a legacy. Obviously continued. My dad used to say that I'm like my mom, but more radical.
Yeah, that's what it sounds like.
Basically, she's vegetarian, I'm vegan. She's, you know, as in Women in Black, I'm not even going to the military.
And you grew up in a small community basically in the center of Israel, right?
Yes, I grew up in a small town. There's no really, it's a yeshuv kihilati, so it's one of those very specific ways of settlements, of Jewish settlements, but not in the like 67.
Within the Green Line, yeah.
Within the Green Line, exactly. And we moved there when I was 2 years old. And it was, I just say, I got away from there at 17. It was a great decision. You would say that it's kind of one of those places. Back then, we were the first generation.
It was like a new community.
It was a new community. It was part of the 7 Stars plan of Ariel Sharon, basically, to put Jewish yeshuvim within the Green Line, but in the middle of Arab Palestinian villages or cities or
so basically
towns,
trying to surround the Palestinian spaces and villages and towns with Jewish, existence.
Basically,
Yeah.
I'm not sure if it's surrounding, more like interrupting. To be fair, and I would, in defense of Matan, which is the place,
name of the place.
the name of the place, I just outed myself. When I grew up in the elementary school, there was very much awareness of where we are. And they try to do it in a very nice way. So we had like a whole space in the school that is like dedicated to show different religions and the different people that lives on this land, and especially surrounding us. And we had also different programs with Arabic villages around for kids. And that was nice. I'm not sure if that's happening these days, probably not. I mean, absolutely, definitely. I haven't been there in years, but absolutely, definitely not happening. These kinds of initiatives. So back then, at least, it was kind of aware. And yet it was, very Zionist liberal left of like, yes, we're going to interrupt you, but we're going to be nice to you.
We're going to be nice about it. So
we're going to be nice. We're going to buy falafel in Jaljulia which we do. It's still the best falafel in the world. But anyway, it's one of those places that are everybody went to the same school, and then everybody went to a bigger high school, all Jewish. I think we had 1 or 2 Arabic students from Tira, but we haven't been so close or anything. But it was a big school with all the small towns around.
The small Jewish towns
The
around.
small Jewish towns, of course. And it was one of those schools that they are very proud with the amount of people going to the military and doing a shirut mashmauti, the meaningful service.
Meaningful service, meaning combat if you're a man, and
maybe combat if
something
you're
very
a woman,
Zionist if you're a
because
woman. Yeah,
look,
as well.
feminism. Anyway,
like very patriotic and very proud of being patriotic, and
in a way, like
being successful.
excellence in Zionism.
Yeah.
This is our,
Yeah.
And I was always
The odd girl out.
far out. Like I was goth and an emo and a hippie, and it depends on the day that I woke up, and I was bullied a lot for it. And I was a feminist as well, and I was a leftist as well.
So you were used to being very, very different.
Very popular. Everybody loved me. Kidding, no, but it was pretty challenging. Wasn't the nicest surrounding, but I survived. And I knew since very young, like I guess like 15 or something, I was already aware of the occupation. I was already, I was the girl in history class that asked our teacher, "Hey, can you teach us about the Nakba?" And she said,
Wow.
"No, I can't. I'm sorry."
That's what she answered?
Yeah, but she was like,
What?
No, to her defense, she said, "I wish, but I can't. I'm sorry."
That's what she said to you.
I swear to God. I swear to God.
That's pretty amazing. I mean, it's amazing that you even said that, because I don't know any 15-year-old Israeli.
I think
who
the
would say
teachers
that.
loved me more than the students, but they also hated me because I was either asleep or arguing.
And it's amazing that she told you the truth. That she was like, "Yeah, that should happen, but I can't.
Yeah.
That's very honest.
I think so. Looking back, I've got my criticism on my teachers, but also like they're humans and they're trying their best, and
You were the kid that actually knew about the Nakba and, knew about the Palestinian struggle and cared about it when you were in middle school, and you knew that you didn't want to go to the army.
Yeah, I mean, back then, it was only the beginning of knowing the nuances, and I still didn't know shit, but it was very obvious to me that Jewish and Arabs don't like each other, but they should love each other. They should like each other. So let's make peace and walk barefoot, and then, and this is where I came from, that with my intuition. And I think also, like, to be honest, to this day, like, this is my inner, in the most simple of, like,
let's just get along.
Let's just fucking get along. Though, of course, with learning and with the years and with stuff comes more knowledge and understanding of, like, yeah, but it's harder than I think. So I held these, like, very naive thoughts and very naive, but actually the thing that uplifted it and validated it was going to an alternative summer camp for youth that was held every summer for like 10 years or something. It was an independent initiative that was in collaboration with Profil Khadash.
So this new profile, it's an organization that supports people that decide not to serve in the military.
Exactly. From any reason, everything is valid. They support what it's called the like gray objection, or like they are taking it into consideration also in the conversation about objection in general. So they also see this as a meaningful thing.
Even if it's not because
if it's not because of the occupation or political or anything
just you
like that.
don't want to
Anyone.
because you don't feel like it, and it's not,
Most people don't come and say like, oh, I don't feel like it. Most people have health problems, or a lot of the time it's financial problems. A lot of the times it's different
reasons.
Religious problems, different reasons, and they support and help with the tools that they have. They also educate about militarism in civilian society and the role of military in civilian society, and the question, the space that the military takes in our society, in our civil society.
Yeah, they have a great Instagram page. I really recommend following them.
Same.
They have amazing content about how militarizing the society, specifically here in Israel, Palestine, is very unhealthy. It's just all in all a bad thing, how much we're militarized.
Yeah, they've got really great stuff, great info that I wish didn't need to exist, but they do.
Yeah.
But it was basically a summer camp for alternative thinking. Like, nobody came to us and said, like, you shouldn't go to the military because this and this and this. Because, of course, this would be illegal.
Yeah, they would close that summer camp very quickly.
Very quickly. And I think it also wasn't the aim. Like, the aim was give tools and more knowledge that you wouldn't get in school or in your youth movement.
Or in any other summer camp.
I think it was one of the best projects. If anybody hearing this, was really one of the best projects that this land known in terms of Jewish youth making a difference in their life. So many people that I know, some of them are in the, leftist elite in a way. They've gone through this camp, whether as guides or doing a workshop there or being a participant or taking part. And we were taught about animal rights movements and feminism and different ways and paths of feminism, about Mizrahi feminism.
Wow, that's very progressive for that time.
Incredibly. I got to know the discrimination and the oppressive system between Ashkenazis and Mizrachis there. So that it deals with a lot of different subjects, and you get to meet other youth from a Palestinian camp, but it's not in the sense of like, hello, this is us. Tell us about your struggle. Oh, that's so sad. I'm so sorry. Let's go home. It's not like this. It's with a lot of dealing and emotions. Really, really intense. It's like one of the most intense weeks I've ever had.
And you were like 15,
I was 15.
Wow.
I was 15. It was July 2011. Which was also the summer of the demonstrations for social justice. It was just like the highlight of demonstrations and civil disobedience. It didn't yield a lot, but I think it legitimized a lot of injustices that are happening on this land and gave it like a voice, like a modern voice, you know?
Yeah.
So from this week of learning so much and also meeting other teenagers that maybe didn't think like me, but they understood where I come from with my political views. And it was this amazing safe space. For the first time, I'm saying the word feminism or occupation, and nobody holds a grudge.
Because that's what you were used to in school.
Yeah. Are you a feminist? Do you hate men? You know, I'm 14, but why do you hate men? You know, and I think I was also kind of lucky in that timing of going there, because that was the time of the demonstrations and all this activism. So I had a place that I could
like practice
and naturally go and finally see other activists. And even though before that, I was kind of like politically involved, but not really. I would go once a year with my mom to a demonstration, and that was about it. I volunteered. I always volunteered in different structures and stuff. But only after this 2011, I really started to understand the bigger picture of the government. Like, what does that actually means more than the class in school, you know, that talks about democracy or talks about different regimes types and how we are supposedly democratic and Jewish and try to justify what it means. And I had a really great teacher for civics, and we argued a lot. But I think because it was almost fun because he knew that I could. You know, the other students just like
they couldn't challenge him.
They didn't. Much. Nobody challenged anything.
You never once had like thoughts of maybe going to the army? It was just clear from the first moment.
I think I had thoughts to go to the military, but for like 5 minutes. It was when I thought to myself, maybe I'll just go to the military theater or military band.
These units that like entertain soldiers.
Yeah, and a lot of them are now very famous people and very famous actors and singers.
Yeah, it's
and
like
that was like almost it's like a stepstone for a lot of people.
Yeah, it's the biggest musicians in the like Israeli society. They all went to like the army band.
Exactly,
that's where they started.
There's kind a whole movie. There's a whole musical.
It's kind of like in high tech in Israel, where a lot of the people come straight from the army, from like intelligence units, and they grab them, and that's how they get their first step there. They get their head start. And so if you weren't in one of these units, usually you're gonna have to actually go and get a degree in computer science and do like longer. Yeah, it's interesting. Very interesting.
But it was only for 5 minutes. So because I had another friend back then that she sang so good. She was one of the best singers that I knew. And she didn't get accepted. So I said, there's no way I'm getting accepted. I might as well not go at all. And I went to the military psychiatrist. I mean, I had the first interview with this really lovely girl, and I was just my jubbly self, ultra hippie, and gave why you don't want to serve the military. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Da, 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 da. Okay. Da, da, da. Go to the military psychiatrist. My whole hippie self, peace earrings and ponytails and the whole thing. It wasn't intentional. This is genuinely what I wore back then. This is not, I'm trying to be, no. This is how I was. And why I don't want to serve the military. Sexism and chauvinism, veganism, environmental reasons, the occupations, just the fact that we all becomes numbers and part of a machine, once we give like 2 to 3 years of our life to an organization that it looks us as numbers, and it's like on paper, it's property.
Like on paper, you're a property of the military once you enlist.
Yeah, exactly. Rechush Tzahal. And not holding a gun and don't believe in violence and this whole thing. And yeah, what the military is doing in the West Bank and in Gaza, I didn't know all the details, but it was very wrong. It seemed very wrong already. And yeah, I was pretty lucky. I'm a conscientious objector, but I didn't think of myself as one at that time. I was just not going to go to the military. I don't agree with it. I didn't know, I didn't think of, well, I did know, but I really just didn't think of the public effect of it and everything. And I was lucky I wasn't sent to military prison because the psychiatrist just looked at me and told me you're scratched.
Which is Hebrew slang for you're
crazy.
Yeah.
There's something wrong with you. You're not 100.
Yeah.
And I said, thank you. And I left. But actually, I could do something about it only 8 months after, because there was supposed to be a committee that I didn't need to be there and I talk. And basically, they need to, I'm sure it's a one person that press a button. But they needed to have this committee to approve that I'm not going to the military, so to give me the official release.
Mm-hmm.
And that took 8 months. I had to call them and remind them. I couldn't start my civil service, which back then I really wanted to do as well.
Mm-hmm. So civil service is something that young Israelis can do instead of an army service. And it's not an army service. It's volunteering in some organization. You could be
but it's very
volunteering
accepted of you.
Expected, you mean?
Expected.
It's expected to serve the country in that way. If you don't want to serve in the military, you can't serve in the military. A lot of religious women that automatically get exempt, religious Jews. If you're a female, you automatically get exempt. And a lot of them do the civil service. And
which is volunteering, basically.
Yeah, volunteering. You could volunteer as, in the fire department, in the schools, in the hospitals, all kinds of places.
Exactly.
NGOs, stuff like that.
My criticism on it came after. So basically, until I could start my civil service, most of the places that I wanted to volunteer in were already taken.
Because it took 8 months until you got your exemption. Mm-hmm.
And all what's left is kindergartens or hospitals that I knew that I wasn't able to, more than just wasn't my thing. Just I didn't have the capacity and the emotional tools to be part of that. So in the end, I volunteered in a charity shop, in a charity secondhand shop. Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
I was already living in Tel Aviv by then, and I was working 7 nights a week in an ice cream shop. Because I already lived independently. The money that comes from civil service, it's volunteering, but you still get a small amount of money, which back then was 800 shekels. Could pay for my bathroom, maybe. So after a month, with a lot of talk with myself, I've decided that I'm stopping doing this civil service. Back then, I wanted to go to Australia And that was like the only thing on my mind. And I did a deep dive within myself of like, is this right? To not continue with this and work instead, self-sustain, but also like work and save for Australia. And I realized that yes, and some people, my mom, by the way, included, back then, maybe now as well, think that it was a pretty selfish decision. But I really looked at myself in the mirror and I thought to myself, I volunteer all the time for years. And it sounds condescending. I don't know how to otherwise frame it. Like, but I volunteered all the time. I initiated things in my school, in different frames that I took part in. And that was also after the 2011, 2012 demonstrations. So back then I was like 16, 17. So I already had this, like, I knew kind of more of the system before making this decision. And yeah, so I didn't continue. I also kind of justify it with, my criticism on this system of civil service that gives positions that professionals need to be in to teenagers and don't basically saying, we don't want to pay. We just don't want to pay for workers. So we give it to teenagers to do so they can build their character or whatever. And then you've got traumatized women, now women, back then teenagers, that had to like help in the hospital instead of a nurse, or like take care of an elder guy that died in her hand. Crazy stuff like this. Or like dealing with children when you've got no tools.
And no experience.
No experience, no tools. Just because these kids are poor and you're coming from the system. So, they should be grateful that somebody cares.
Yeah.
So it's this whole system. It's making kids kind of volunteer, but it's not. It's not. Instead of creating a culture that promotes volunteering, from the heart, saying that something is wrong. So you go and you make the time and you fix it. You kind of like make people do this in the name of patriotism instead of,
Yeah, totally. I'm with you on that rant.
Continue.
Definitely. But all this time in school and at home, even in this month that you were in the civil service and in all the summer camp and all the things that you did, nobody was criticizing Zionism. Nobody was talking about Zionism and what it's doing.
No, not really. I mean, I guess some people did, but I wasn't in those radical circles yet.
So even though your circles sound pretty radical for someone that age.
But it wasn't,
nobody was questioning if Zionism is,
I think,
okay and right.
Some people did, because I do remember like signs in those demonstrations of like Zionism is racism and stuff like this. But I think because I wasn't in that capacity of understanding yet, so when I think about it now, I didn't get it. Or I didn't want to get it. My understanding of what Zionism means came after I left Israel, because I had something to compare of what I've known in Zionism, which is in a way a value.
So it was taught to you like it's a value, it's a good value, it's a virtue.
Yeah, not as a political agenda, not something related to politics at all, actually. It was a philosophy,
It was just the ultimate good. That's how it was taught. Like it's
and especially the ultimate good for
the better of us.
For Jewish people, because in schools nobody talks about Palestinians really.
Because everybody in your school is Jewish. So if it's the best thing for Jews, then it's the best thing for everybody.
Exactly. But also just in a way of saying I'm a Zionist or you're a Zionist, to be a Zionist, synonymous for kind.
Oh yeah,
brave,
caring, altruistic.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It wasn't related at all as a political agenda or anything related to politics or just some kind of a version of,
it wasn't an ideology.
Jewish white supremacy,
it wasn't related to as an ideology. It was related to as
we here because we needed a place that is safe after the Holocaust. And a couple of years after, I also got to know the Farhud and everything, and actually what happened to my whole other side of the family, of course, because like, why would we get taught that in school? Like, so my Mizrahi side.
So you're half Ashkenazi, half Mizrahi.
Like half Bulgarian from my dad's side, completely Bulgarian. Oh, and I actually think that I got my my activism I got from my mom, but the radicalism I got from my grandma's uncle, who was in Bulgaria, a Jewish communist partisan.
Oh, wow.
And there's a story that I read online. There's not a lot of info on him, but he was pretty famous. And there's a story that I read. He walked in the street with his friend, and he was already kind of like known as this partisan troublemaker.
Mm-hmm.
And the police caught them, and they fought, and there was like a bunch of blood and everything. And with his blood, he wrote on the wall, "Death to fascism, power to the people."
Wow.
Which, after I learned that death to fascism, power to the people, or just death to fascism, it was a name of a brigade, of a partisan brigade in Bulgaria.
Oh, wow.
Basically.
Interesting.
Yeah. So this is like a funky part in my history. Like half is Bulgarian, and the other half, my mom's side, is, so my grandma is from Iraq, and then my mom's grandpa from her dad's side, it sounds really confusing, but basically my great-grandfather came from Köln, from Germany in the 30s. He was a smart man, I must admit, and he ran away. and he came to Palestine, and I don't remember.
So kind of a mix.
I'm
a mix of several places, several histories, different histories. And none of these people and none of the places that you were in weren't talking about Zionism as part of the problem or as an ideology or as something like that. And you're saying you learned when you went abroad more about what Zionism actually means.
Exactly. So fast forward, I'm after Australia. I'm after going back, living in Tel Aviv, working 2.5 jobs. So I went abroad because I felt like I needed a change, and I couldn't, on paper, I had a great life because I was doing stuff that I kind of liked, and I had a great apartment and great price in Tel Aviv, and I was already doing a bunch of activism projects, and like people knew me, I knew people, I had friends, knock on wood, a lot. It was great. Mm-hmm. But it was way too stressful, whether it's like the capitalism that got to my brain and to my veins, and the political pressure, and just being completely exhausted. So I went to Europe. I joined this theater Jewish Palestinian seminar of movement called Windows, Channels for Communication, which later I also really joined, and now I'm part of the board members. And I was in this seminar, which taught me a lot, and it was a seminar that also teach us to listen and understand each other's narratives, and teach us different tools of resistance, of nonviolent resistance against occupation.
It's amazing because my Arabic teacher is a counselor in this organization, and that's how I heard about it, and it's pretty cool. It could sound from the outside like very like a normalization kind of dialogue, kind of lovey-dovey organization, but actually you're talking about real resistance to the occupation.
We're talking about real resistance, we're talking about real unity, we're talking about the mutual understanding of the different power structures. And one of the cool things about it is that, it exists for the past 30 years. It's been very active in the Second Intifada. It was really a center for co-resistance. So it has a really admirable past and also present. And so people, Israelis and Palestinians from the West Bank and Palestinians with an Israeli citizenship, so within the Israeli territories, they meet and they talk and they kind of like grow together. So like some people know each other there since they were 15 and now they're 30. Or like people that started when they were 30, 40, and now they're much older. And what's special about it is that whenever they meet or whenever we meet, because I've been in quite a few seminars and every time it's a different focus and different tools, but we see each other grow also within this journey of understanding the political situation and what we feel about it and how we act in what stages in our life we are. Some people got kids already. Some participants came from refugee camps. So it's not only the fancy places, you know?
It's not only the privileged people
exactly.
on the sides.
Exactly. And it's a bunch of incredible people that teach me all the time. So this was the beginning. This was the beginning of basically going abroad. I didn't know that I would not go back to live in Israel, Palestine, in Tel Aviv. Like, this wasn't my plan to leave forever. It was to travel because I miss traveling and I needed a change. But I also found myself within this travel that took a year. I always was drawn and found myself in different struggles, going out of my comfort zones. Also, when it comes to activism, joining climate justice movements and demonstrations, and also ways of activism that I haven't experienced here, like climbing a tree and living on a tree for a week and a half so the forest wouldn't get caught. It was this, and then I also were half a year in Denmark in this institution called International People's College. That was an international school that is like pre-academic studies. So it's not academic. It's like an introduction to a lot of subjects. And one of them was Middle East studies. And within that was 2 weeks of intense learning about the conflict and the occupation. Basically, the activism, and especially the anti-occupation activism, didn't stop when I left. And some say it even gotten bigger.
Do you feel like maybe that's kind of like a reaction to not being here? Like kind of feeling like maybe guilty, like you can't be on the ground and fight it here, so you need to do more because you're not here?
I'm sure guilt plays a part in it. I'm not going to lie. I'm sure guilt plays part in it. But I'm not necessarily guilty because I live abroad, but I'm guilty because I'm part of the oppressor side wherever I go towards Palestinians.
Oh, that's where you feel guilt.
In a way.
Mm-hmm.
Wherever I go, I mean, of course, power structures are different in different places, but even within Germany, being a Jewish person or being Israeli, even though we are an oppressed minority within Germany, we are still in a higher level of privilege in comparison to Palestinians.
There in Germany.
Germany, exactly.
So you're saying the power structures
wherever I go
are copied to other places.
So it's like the responsibility stays with me. You know? It's because I buy cheaper in the supermarket doesn't mean I forget where money is going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So yeah, the original question was about Zionism. So only after I left, I kind of got a sense and understanding of what Zionism is when you don't teach it and when you don't look at it as a value, as I said before, but as a plan and as a political agenda and as something physical. That's the thing. It became physical because also how we get taught it, it's the Zionist spirit that kept the Jewish people alive and kept us motivated to evolve and to get, so modernized and ta-da-da-da-da-da-da. As the Zionist spirit,
Yeah. But then you hear about it from Palestinians. And they're like, well, Zionism for me is destroying my house.
I was never in favor of Zionism.
Like
in the sense of like, I never went out and thought to myself like, yeah, I'm a Zionist. It was never like a term that I kind of used for myself even before I became not a Zionist, anti-Zionist, and eventually.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't get this like transition of super Zionist to...
Yeah, a lot of people here, Israelis, they don't, like if you ask them, are you a Zionist? They wouldn't really say, oh yeah. But if you see how they view the situation and what they think and what they feel and what they would want and how they view Palestinians, then yeah, they're Zionists.
Yeah.
Like, not wanting to give up your privileges as being a colonizer or an oppressor, and doing everything to not give up those privileges is a Zionist thing to do if you live here.
Yeah, it's true.
That's
but then
how it works.
You would have also the opposite of people of somebody that I say, yes, I'm a Zionist. But then you would hear what he believes or what he thinks about the government or what he thinks about the occupation,
Yeah. Because they're just used to using that as, I'm a good person.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm part of society.
Yeah. I belong.
Exactly.
Or I'm not willing to cross that red line and say that I'm not a Zionist because that's just unacceptable.
Yeah, it's kind of like a red line, a weird red line that a lot of people are not willing to
cross. You moved to Leipzig after traveling around in Europe a little, and you realized you wanted to stay there.
I'm very lucky. I've got my other half as my best friend in Leipzig. We met in Australia. And I was after that time of, I don't want to travel anymore. Also don't want to go home. Like I didn't have that calling. I'm like, now it's time, Like when you travel a lot, then you do have this sense of like, it's time. And I didn't have that. It was a very impulsive yet conscious decision of using this privilege of a German passport. I stayed in Germany and I fell in love with Leipzig, and I've got a lot of criticism. My best friend lived in Leipzig. I went there for a couple of times for a visit. In the end, it said stay. It's a very political city with really vibrant people and activism. And yet it feels like a village in the end of the day.
And so you kind of made that your home in the past few years. And you started being more active there.
Yeah. About 3 weeks or like a month in, I already told my best friend. And I was also lucky that my best friend, which we knew each other since we were hippies, like 8 years ago in Australia, she also found herself in the path of being an activist and being engaged. And it was great. So like a month in, I was like, okay, what's happening? Tell me, where do I need to go to make some justice here? To go demonstrate somewhere. And then she told me that the university, so the Students for Future Leipzig, are planning a whole week strike in the university. And instead of going to school, they will make it as a public school for climate. For climate justice. So there were a bunch of workshops and different initiatives and lectures and stuff like this. And I joined them, even though I did not go to the university. I was not a student, never a student. My mom is laughing that I'm not a student. I'm just shutting universities down. I joined in, and I joined a group of students of color. I joined them as someone that was very much at the beginning of understanding who I am, just discovering that I am a woman of color in my relation to Europe and the amount of time that I spend there. And not only in Europe, but also in the relation of me having the darkest skin in my family, even though I'm very pale brown, but very Iraqi. So it was very much at the beginning of this process, and I joined them. So I got into this subject and understanding of intersectionality in the end of the day. This kind of rolled and continued because I made friends and I joined different circles, and I had this activist spaces because this is what I knew. I felt at home in the end of the day.
But you felt at home with struggles.
Yeah. The struggles came a bit after, with a more deep understanding once I felt comfortable, in Leipzig and getting to know Leipzig more, and also being vocal however I could against the occupation, because that was part of my reality. This is what I know from home, and this is part of like, so tell me about your home. So that's a wall, you know, like this is part of how I talk about where I come from. And it didn't sit right with some people. They were really confused and they were kind of shocked. They didn't understand, or they did, but then it was so surprising to them to hear another person Israeli say that it validates what they felt towards the situation.
You're talking about Germans?
I'm talking about Germans.
Okay, let's start that conversation. So how is it being an anti-occupation Israeli activist in Germany? You're saying they were surprised, but it validated their feelings. And let's talk about it. Like, not everybody knows about the situation in Germany.
Yeah, so it's complicated, not in the sense that it's really complicated. It's emotionally complicated always. In Germany, there's a bit of more black and white approach to a lot of things. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not. Being a political person is not a crime, as it shouldn't be. Being a leftist, you're not a traitor, you know? So it's much more popular to be leftist in Germany.
You even call it the anti-Deutsch.
Yeah,
which means anti-German? Like
there's a branch of leftist ideology. So the left kind of breaks into two parts in Germany. Pro-Israel in the name of fighting anti-Semitism. And the other half are either criticizing Israel or they don't talk.
So you're saying that the left in Germany, or the progressive communities in Germany, think basically the same until it gets to Palestine.
More or less.
And then they split.
More or less. I mean, I'm not an expert, and I'm sure they don't agree on other things as well, but this is the main subject that can tore up a movement.
Obviously, this has a lot to do with the guilt that Germans, especially young Germans, feel for the Holocaust. And then the only way to process this for them, or the only way to somehow fix it, is just blindly support Israel and say that everything anti-Israel or anti-occupation is anti-Semitic.
Absolutely. Some of them would hold the most right-wing ideas that we have here as a leftist in Germany when it comes to Israel-Palestine. They would be like, oh, it's really, you see, Israel wants peace because it made...
the Prime Minister said...
Because we are now friends with Dubai. You know? It's like this.
And these are progressive thinkers.
Supposedly, and I always hope for a change. But basically, after understanding a bit more, this is like the inner politics of the left, and specifically Leipzig, which is also one of the hubs of the anti-Deutsch movement, who also in charge and kind of like, so it's not like a one person, you know? It's an ideology and kind of like a stream of, it's cool. They have clubs, they own like people who owns, and collectives who owns this ideology of anti-Deutsch. They own the biggest underground culture in Leipzig.
Wow.
Like the scene. So while discovering this, I also got to know, I had friends that I met in different places, and specifically Israeli friends, as naturally as you go and you find, you know, your tribe. I found my Israeli Jewish friends who happened to be also very leftist, and I even knew one of them from before. And because the radical left in Israel is so small, we all kind of know the same people as well back home. It's
we all date the same people as well.
You know, we all dated
all
them.
Four of us.
Blocked road with them. So we all.
Yeah.
So really, even in Europe, in different places of the world, after this whole thing with the West Bank annexation, this whole plan, remember?
Yeah. 2020.
Exactly. So there was this plan of annexing 2/3 of the West Bank. So we're like, me and my leftist Israeli friends, what are we going to do? Let's do something, what we're going to do. And we did a demonstration, which was small and nice, in front of the US embassy. Because in Leipzig, there's no Israeli embassy. But there's a US one, because obviously it was this whole annexation is in support of the US. We were about 80 people.
All Israelis?
No. We were some Israelis, yes, because our group was Israeli, but it was Palestinians, a lot of Palestinians, a lot of people that supports, some people that were already involved. So you could see it's like mainly white Germans that like were already involved, but it was the first time that they were really active about something like this. And I think it was because for the first time in a recent time, it came from an Israeli Jewish voice, and we kind of like recognized it, and we recognized each other's frustration of the situation of like, we left Israel, Palestine, we still deal with it, but we don't have to explain the most basic thing to a grown-up about the political reality. Like, people are telling us that we shouldn't critique Israel because that's anti-Semite.
Like, Germans are telling you as a Jewish Israeli that you shouldn't be criticizing Israel because that's anti-Semitic.
Exactly.
Wow, that's screwed up.
I've been told anti-Semite. We're in a kafia, all right? Because the kafia, in the eyes of anti-Deutsch and in the eyes of what is being told, the anti-Semitic scarf.
Just because it's one of the symbols of the Palestinian struggle.
Exactly.
Palestinian culture.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's also very screwed up.
We kind of decided that we want our voices to be heard, but we also need this space to share with each other. So we started this network for Jewish Israelis, leftists with past and present future in activism against occupation, which we are called YID, Yiddish Israelische Dissens. We're a small group, but we make a lot of noise. And we always collaborate with other Palestinian movements, whether in Leipzig or outside of Leipzig. We're mainly focusing in Leipzig, or we try, because we kind of believe that, think global, act local. And also because there are a lot of already great Jewish and Israeli initiatives in Berlin, in Hanover, in different places around Germany. Yeah, we want to give a contra to this Zionist Jewish narrative that specifically Germans love very much, even if they're not involved. It's very comfortable to them because it shows, hey, you didn't kill everybody, it's okay.
It's their relief from their guilt.
Exactly.
Because they didn't really work on having other options for dealing with that.
There was a whole generation that was silent. They did not talk about the Holocaust. They did not talk about their experiences. They did not deal, whether it's internal or with other people. There was no real healing process there. And therefore, in my belief, German society doesn't know yet how to deal with anti-Semitism, and especially with internal anti-Semitism, because they are being told now Israel is the main representative of Jewish people in the world. Therefore, criticizing Israel
is anti-Semitic.
Is anti-Semitic.
Yeah. And it's really interesting that, the right wing in Germany, people who are actually fascist and anti-Semitic, also goes together with being anti-Palestinian and racist towards, Arabs and Islamophobic and stuff like that.
Absolutely.
And homophobic and hating on everyone, basically.
Exactly. But
those people are hating on anyone who's different, while Palestinians and Israelis and Jews who are saying, no, the occupation needs to stop, people are calling them anti-Semitic, while the real anti-Semites are out there, not talking about the occupation and not doing anything about that.
Actually, the right wing in Germany, from my experience, don't even really talk about Israel and Palestine. They don't talk about it. This is not the way of anti-Semitism. I don't say it's not existing, anti-Semitism in a costume of being a radical left pro-Palestine person. It exists, but it's not as much as people saying that COVID happened because Jewish people.
Basically, what I understand from this, and also from watching what's going on with anti-Semitism in the world recently with people like Kanye West who say real anti-Semitic things. And it's really interesting to see that These people never criticized the occupation and never criticized Zionism that Israel and Jewish people are doing. It's only criticizing things that are conspiracies, like Jews control the media and Jews control the world and stuff like that. And Jews control the bank. Like, it's not talking about what the real things on the ground that you can see every day that Israelis are doing.
You're actually really right about that. And I thought I understood you before, but now I understand even better what you meant. Because it's actually like basically people that saying that anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism and anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. It's like, not only that it's not true, it's physically not true, because as you said, those people don't even talk about Israel Palestine. So real anti-Semitism, it's not that. And the thing is, we realized we needed a voice to be heard, and we needed to use our voice with this weird position that Jewish people and Israeli people are in, as being a oppressed minority, but also in the most privileged minority in a way.
In the context of Germany.
Specifically in the context of Germany, of course. So we do definitely realize that we are being listened more. So therefore our aim with telling our stories or telling how it is to be leftist in Israel, how it is to be activist against the occupation in Israel, Palestine, comes to uplift Palestinian voices, to work with Palestinian voices, with Palestinian people, with Palestinian movements, because we're not the point here. But your ideology in our name, silencing people that been through shit to be where they are today, and to hear your fetishism. Look how feminist the Israeli military is. There's women there. You know?
So you're saying they're fetishizing Israel and the Israeli military and the occupation.
Absolutely.
While telling Palestinians who are in Germany in the first place because they can't be in Palestine.
Absolutely.
Telling them, you're anti-Semitic.
Basically.
And telling the Israelis that are in there also, you're anti-Semitic, which is also weird.
Exactly. People have been trying to silence us as well. Wherever we go, wherever we talk, not that we talked a lot, but when we did, there was always a letter from this organization or this group that I don't have the names right now. Like, I don't want to, they're not point. That like, be aware that there might be anti-Semitic remarks in the event that you're hosting today, or in this day. When it's a panel of Israeli Jewish people from different places as well, if people think, they all come from Tel Aviv and they, we've got really from all over, and we have basically the base belief of activism against the occupation, but we're also very different people, and we don't come as a unite front. We are individuals coming together as a group to raise a collective voice against silencing Palestinians. And in addition to that, actually, silencing Jewish Israelis that critique their own country is anti-Semitic. We're like whispering, hey, actually, you know what?
Actually, you're anti-Semitic.
You're anti-Semitic.
For trying to silence us talking about the occupation.
Exactly.
That's interesting.
And since then, we do when we can, and we join demonstrations and we hold different events. And so basically the main activism,
I think that the fact that Palestinian organizations and Palestinian people there join together and are part of what you do and you're part of what they do says a lot. Because if Palestinians who are part of the Palestinian struggle and support it accept your voice as a voice that uplifts their voice and as a voice that contributes to this struggle, then that's all the proof you need to understand where you guys are heading, like what direction you're going and what you believe in.
It's true. I mean, I think nobody, this is the whole point, like we don't follow blindly. We work together and we understand each other and understand the power structures. It's to take our reality from back home, or like their parents' reality or their grandparents' reality, and put it on the table for Germans that are uncomfortable. Like, Palestinians will not continue to be occupied and oppressed because Germans don't feel comfortable talking about it.
It's also not about, erasing the past and the power dynamics from where you come from.
Absolutely
and
not.
acting like everything's okay because we're far away from that now. It's more like, no, here we might have a different power dynamic between us, but the original places where we come from, or the original stories of where we call home and, what our life experience was, is all about this power imbalance between Israelis and Palestinians.
Exactly.
And that continues anywhere where you meet.
Exactly. And we don't expect everybody to work with us or to be fan of us, because we are not the point here in the end of the day. And it also doesn't work with everybody, like every Palestinian or every Palestinian movement group.
That's what I wanted to ask, actually, is you still define yourselves as Israelis, even though you don't live there anymore. And I'm wondering if there are Palestinians or Palestinian organizations in that area that don't want to
associate
with a group that still defines themselves as Israelis.
So we want to acknowledge those places that we come from. And so the word descends is also critiques in German.
Mm-hmm.
In a way, it's like giving critique.
So it's kind of like a pun.
Kind of. And also JID is Yid, which means Jewish.
Jew in German.
Exactly. Yeah. Jewish in German is Jüdisch, but like Yid was kind of like a name. It's like a Jew. We're not going to be your token Jewish people to make you feel less anti-Semitic because you didn't talk to your grandparents. So it was a bit of a twist on that.
It sounds like a disruption of what's going on in Germany, of the discourse there.
Yeah, but we're not the only ones. So when I said that we're not a Jewish group, I meant that we're not only coming from the Jewish perspective, because not all Jewish people are Israelis, and not all Jewish people are connected to what's going on in Israel, Palestine, and the occupation. Not all Jewish Zionists. Most Jewish people don't live in Israel, etc., etc. We don't want to put the equivalent between Jewish people and Israelis. That's the narrative we're trying to break here.
Yeah.
As well. Zionism doesn't mean Semitism. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So this is, for your question, this is why we wanted to put the Jewish Israelis descent. We don't have other word now.
But what I actually asked was, are there Palestinians who don't want to cooperate with you because you still define yourselves as Israeli, even though you don't live there anymore, which to many people is like a bad thing. Like, don't use that identity. Some people are like, it's a made-up identity, like, why do you need to still use it? Why do you need to still wear it as a badge?
It's because none of us really feels part of the German culture. We didn't come for Germany for Germany. So I think we had one incident of a panel that one of our members, and me actually as well, we participated, and there was supposed to be a Palestinian woman, and she said she doesn't want to sit with colonizers.
Okay.
But other than that...
So that's not about how you define yourselves.
No,
it's
but
more about,
I guess,
the power dynamics.
No, we actually didn't get any negative. I'm sure, we got criticism, of course, we learn all the time. But on that sense, no, people are very understandable when it comes to this.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
How we call ourselves. And we're also just very loud with what we think. One of our members, Michael Sapir, is like a celebrity on Twitter, and he's very outspoken. We all very much not shy with protecting what we believe that is right, and that's ending the occupation, whatever it means that we need to do.
Yeah, it's also, I think, about not shying away from the responsibility that we need to take as Israelis, no matter where we are.
Exactly. And this is, in the end of the day, also part of why we have the Israelis in the name.
I want to talk a little bit about Misarvot, which is a movement that you helped initiate about 7 years ago.
Yeah, something like this. Misarvot is an Israeli network of political objectors in the past supporting the present political military objectors. So youth, teenagers, that no, they don't want to serve the military. They object in the military base, or some of them start the military service already, and then they realize they are not willing to take part of what is happening, don't want to take part in this organization, and we give them the support that they need, whether it's legal or mental and emotional, and give them a back. Doing something, a step like this, especially being proud of it and public about it, can create a lot of tension between friends, families, whole cities, whole towns,
Whole countries. That's
you know?
happened, yeah.
But like really on the personal level, when all your friends are going to the military, but you know in your heart that you're not going to, that's a pressure that is very real. So we give them also a community, and we learn together, we make different activities together. So we've got people that come to us, hey, I'm going to the military in like a week. And it's the last minute. I don't know what to do, and I really don't want to go there. I really don't support what's happening. But we also got people coming in the age of 16.
Wow.
You know? I already know that I don't want to serve the military because I know this. In Mesarvot, you've got the smartest kids. Really?
Sure. Yeah.
Well, some of them go to military prison, and that's actually the main thing. So in the name of resisting, they're paying the price if the military don't release them. And most of the time when they say, I don't want to serve the military because of political reasons, 1, 2, 3, 4, they don't release them because the military wants to show who's in control.
And they also want to show the public that there's a price. If
Exactly.
you're gonna do this,
that there's
you have to pay a price.
especially if that kid goes public.
Yeah.
That we support their campaigns and like showing this reality of 18-year-olds going to military prisons because they don't want to hold a gun and shoot a Palestinian, or they point the finger of what's wrong with the system that is oppressing a whole nation. And I am doing their social media. Well, I did their social media after all of this. And I did their social media. Yes, I was there like 6-7 years ago, but I wasn't back then when I started like being an activist. I wasn't organized. I wasn't part of any group. I didn't want to be part of any group. I like the fluidity. I still figured out where I stand with everything, and it grew to be kind of like a big part in my heart. So I was active in that in the past like 3 years or so. Still sometimes, still on the radar. These days, actually, I took a bit of a step back from activism, even though I sometimes forget that I chose this.
But it still feels like Mesarvot is kind of like your baby, your home, politically.
I think it's just really the basic. One of the objectors a few months ago in an article, they said, this is the basic. Like, it's kind of crazy that not going to the military is the last thing that people think of that needs to be. I mean,
it's
who's doing the rest?
It's like the final frontier for a lot of
It's the final
Israelis.
frontier, even though it's supposed to be like
The most basic thing.
the most basic of, I don't want to hold a gun. It should be the first thing. And once you do know about the occupation, who's doing the occupation? Who's doing the arrest? Who's doing the demolishing? Who's doing it's the military. And then, people are thinking, oh, I'm going to be the nice one. Yeah. I'm going to be the nice soldier in the checkpoint.
Yeah, exactly.
And we say...
Or I'm going to be in the military band or military theater. I'm just going to entertain soldiers.
I'm just going to,
Maybe I'll even get those messages of like, anti-occupation inside those content.
Yeah.
Some of them even think that kind of stuff.
So we point out the systematic aspect of it. This is a nice soldier and this is a bad soldier. I'm sure they're both really nice.
But they're part of a system.
But they're part of a system that tell them that this is okay to demolish a house of a family with 2 kids because the father of the grandfather of the cousin of the did something.
Yeah. So you kind of helped initiate this organization, this movement that I'm a very big fan of, I must say. I feel like Mesarvot, this movement is, for me, a role model. Like as activists, like these 16, 17, 18-year-olds are my role models. Because when I was their age, I did not have the courage to do what they're doing, and I didn't understand what was going on around me at that level of awareness, of political awareness, and I wasn't able to say, this is wrong. I'm not taking part in this. I'm not obeying, and they're doing it. And it's like, so it fills me with hope and inspiration. And I just want to say, I want to take the opportunity to say I'm a huge fan of Misalvot.
Yeah,
and
me too.
I really thank you and all the other people that created this and that are taking part in this. You really give me and other people I know, like, the strength to understand that, like, it doesn't matter what everybody's saying. You're doing the right thing. Civil disobedience is nonviolent resistance, and it should be used.
And it's really shown in the feedback that we get. So we get so many different feedbacks. Most of them are positive and are grateful. Internationals, Palestinians living abroad as refugees, or Palestinians from the West Bank that have never seen an Israeli not in uniforms. So it comes from really all over. We lead a letter campaign every time there's an objector sitting in the military prison. So he or she or they get tons of support letters from all over the world.
Wow.
Really, sometimes it's like 200, sometimes it's 70, sometimes it's 1,000.
1,000 letters for support of this person.
For example,
Wow.
yeah,
That's
like
that's a
through
ton of
the
support.
through the time that they serve in military prison. We're probably one of the most hated groups in Israel.
And feared of.
You know,
It's very scary for people who are Zionists to see your success.
I wouldn't say success. We're not there, but we're
No, I'm saying,
working on it.
seeing, I mean,
Yeah, that actually
seeing that it works, seeing
it
that more and more
works,
people are
the
doing
effect,
it.
Exactly.
That's
I mean,
scary
we
to
didn't start
someone.
it. We didn't start it. Conscientious objection was here since the beginning, since the very beginning in 48.
Yeah.
There were people that were here and they said, no, you're going the wrong way. We're not going to join you. So we didn't invent the circle.
It's also not new here in this space. It's historically something that's a tool that people used. Activists used civil disobedience for years and years. Gandhi was a very big advocate for civil disobedience and the power in nonviolent civil disobedience, saying, I'm not willing to take part in this.
It's true.
Do you feel like you want to come back and live here? Do you feel like it's something that you don't want to do at this point ideologically? Or you just found yourself a home for now in Germany and, it is what it is and you don't imagine a future anywhere specific? Like, what do you think about your future in the sense of, like, choosing where to live and what that means? Do you see yourself living here?
Yes. I see myself coming back, if I'm honest with myself. I am very much attached to this land in ways that it's physically painful sometimes to be far away while horrible things are happening. And yet at the same time to be very grateful of where I am and to stay in the end of the day, to stay in Germany. I do see myself coming back, but that would be probably because of my sister. I've got a 10-year-old sister. We're in good contact, but I think if something big would happen in our life, I would want to be there. So of course, anyone in my family, if something happens, for the good or for the bad. But at the moment, I do see, I am staying in Leipzig, and I'm a big fan of this city with all of its hardships and inner politics. And obviously, we talked only about the anti-Dutch and the occupation and all that, but it's a world full of struggles out there. And Leipzig is kind of like a home that I feel that is more accepting, that's more accepting me than Israel these days. Israel-Palestine, as I like to say. When people ask me where I'm from, I say Israel, Palestine.
Yeah, that was going to be my next question.
Yeah. At the very beginning, of course, I only said Israel because I didn't really think of what it meant, really. But saying only Palestine doesn't feel like it fits to my experience of coming where I'm from, because I'm not Palestinian.
And you also didn't grow up in a country that calls itself Palestine.
It's true.
You
It's
grew
just
up in a
as
country
simple as that.
I mean,
It's sometimes really as simple as that.
Yeah.
And so I'd rather say Israel, Palestine, or Palestine, Israel, because both of them exist in
different ways,
whether I want them or not.
Yeah.
The amazing thing about living in Leipzig and living in Europe, I guess, is that it's funny to think about it, but you really meet the Middle East, because you meet people from Jordan and Lebanon and Syria and Dubai and Yemen, Palestine. This is the first thing that I'm so grateful for when I live there, because I met such amazing people that share the same beliefs with me and also share the same criticism to our own countries, and we relate on that. And I meet Palestinians that I am lucky to call friends, that I would never meet them if I lived here. I have Palestinian friends here, but I don't see them every day. I can't sit with them for coffee. To be surrounded by people that also accept the complexity of me or any leftist, anti-occupation activist Israeli's existence and understand the experience.
We're reaching the end
of
our conversation, which was super, super interesting. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And I want to offer you the space to say, whatever you want to be like your message, whether it's to Germans, whether it's to Palestinians, to Jews, to Israelis, to anyone.
I think what I want to say and why I'm so excited to also be in this podcast and why I think it's so important, it's because people outside knows about human rights and activism groups against occupation in Israel. They know about them, but it's a very systematic thing. It's very much more of ideas, and it's hard to believe sometimes. There are so many Palestinians that unfortunately that I met that told me, you're the first Israeli that I hear that thinks that way.
Oh yeah.
The first Israeli that I met without a uniform.
Yeah, I've gotten that.
Ridiculous amount of people. Yeah. You're the first Israeli. A woman in her 50s told me, you're the first Israeli that I met without a uniform. That's insane to me, and that's a privilege to me. And I think my message here is that we exist, radical, critical voices that comes from genuine place exist within Israel, Palestine, from the oppressor side.
Definitely. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And good luck with everything.
Oh, I need it.